what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm religious. I grew up religious. I am pretty spiritual, as in I am legally recognized as an ordained minister. And I can perform weddings and other things like that. I'm ordained as a spiritual humanist, which is a very blanket term. I've studied comparative religions in college and as continuing education for like my whole life, pretty much. I grew up Southern Baptist, and now as like I would say probably around the age of 31, 32, I stopped completely distrusting all Christians instantly. I've always gotten along fine with Catholics, but I mean, that's just because they drink and they feel guilty all the time. But no, I like to read a lot of philosophy, especially like Buddhist stuff now. I don't know if it's because I'm bipolar and all of that, but I really do feel that life is suffering and very temporary and fleeting. And I feel like a lot of the Buddhist teachings and books, I feel like they're very relatable in a lot of ways. But I'm fascinated by the ancient human brain, which we all still carry with us, trying to explain the unknown by using deities and, you know, magic and that kind of thing. So it's like, you know, I'm skeptical, but I believe that everyone is interconnected, and if we don't treat each other well as we want to be treated, then there's no point in this. But I also think that we're living in hell, if that's the bardo that we're in, and that we need more hot tubs.
Cool. Make it even more like hell with boiling things. Beautiful. Evan, what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Not much. Not much. I don't know. Mostly when I think about that stuff, it gives me a headache and it makes me feel hopeless about things. And I just prefer not to let my mind linger on such things. I went through a pretty big phase, as a lot of people do in college when you're figuring things out about yourself. You know, where I eventually kind of turned away from Christianity, which I was brought up in. But I never really found an adequate replacement. And I don't know, despite a lot of journaling and a lot of research, and well, not a lot of research, but like, you know, a marginal amount of like considering other points of view, ultimately, I feel like humanity is inherently limited in its understanding of the universe. And so I don't really see much point in pursuing a fuller understanding of it. Like, I just got to a point in my life where I felt like I was spinning my wheels theologically and spiritually, and just decided, you know what? I know enough about the world, and I'm just going to move forward with what I know and just, you know, move more into action and less in the very big trap that can be my brain sometimes. I can be really, I get hung up on things really easily, and things can I make mountains out of molehills all the time. And it's one of those things that I think once I just let go of needing to try and understand greater aspects of spirituality, I felt freer just to live. And so that's where I'm at right now.
That's great. Sort of embedded in the question, but what is your definition of God? But then also, like, do you believe in God?
I, 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 That is a huge question. I fully appreciate that other people believe in God and that they think of God as like an infallible creator that is all knowing. I don't really believe that there is what they would describe as God, like in those terms, like an infallible creator being, a protector. I think that there is definitely a higher power that we won't ever be able to know because we are limited by our existence. We can only get what we have through our senses, and we're limited by the way that we process our senses. And some people are even further limited by how many senses they have. And we have filters on our brain that are mental illness or, drinking, an addiction, or not any of that, the kind of people that are high on life, and I don't quite understand them. But I would say that there is a collective universal conscious, and working in the pizza, like mom and pop pizza places, I would see it constantly on days where everyone wants meat lovers, even though they always only eat cheese. They just have a wild hair up their ass. But you will see like these, it's the majority of the way that people are acting, like some people would attribute things to like the full moon, that kind of stuff. We are affected by more than we know. And I would like to think that if there is a higher power, it's, and if we're, I wouldn't say that there's even necessarily a duality like God and the devil, but that underlying all of existence, I would like to say that people are striving to feel connected and loved and safe. And so universal love is ultimately what I would attribute to being a higher power. But I think that is created by us, not us being created by it.
I like that a lot. Evan, what's your definition of God?
Don't really have one. No, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I like that answer, but it's like I hear it and I think, yeah, maybe not. I don't know. If there's one thing about being agnostic, which is more or less what I consider myself, it's it's a bit of a cop out, honestly, because I can just say, yeah, maybe, and that's like my whole philosophy on things.
Yeah.
I did want to share a line from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes.
In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. And I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about like it's a glorious thing, life, but it's a hell of a mess. And why? I don't know. And I'll never know.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I think that's also a perfectly valid answer. And, while you may consider it to be a cop-out, I think it's really good for people to be willing to say,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to all options, more or less. Like, I'll listen. I don't know.
yeah, and that's fine. Which might make this next question even more of a difficult thing that you might want to use a cop-out for. But is free will an illusion?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Elaborate.
No. Well, I mean, to think that free will is an illusion is already thinking that somehow you have a master puppeteer, a creator that has made, your entire life is predestined for something. And no, free will is, you make your own decisions, and that's all based on past experience, and what the situation is. And I think ultimately everyone, has, two demons fighting. I wouldn't even say one of them's good and one is evil. Two coyotes, even. Two wolves are fighting, and one is supposedly good and one is supposedly bad. But, bad people do good things and good people do bad things. So, free will is definitely real. What do you think?
I mean, I feel like a lot of people who debate this question look at it a little bit differently than, predestination versus the alternative. Like the idea that we are like someone who would not have a free will but feels like they have a free will because they're consciously making choices, but those choices are inherently based on decision making, which is inherently based on, everything about that person. And so it's like who I am predestines what I do in a sense. So like I can humor that, and like I get that idea. I had like a really depressing conversation with some former roommates about this one time. The idea that everything we do, like no matter what we do, it's like, well, that's just what happens, and it's all strictly based on things that are out of our control, even though we feel like we have control. And like you said, it's this whole idea that it's an illusion. I don't necessarily buy into it, but I understand logically where it comes from, and I think there is a basis for that. But personally, I think free will is a thing. But I do think it is inherently, I don't think it's as free as a lot of people might think, I guess.
Yeah. And that kind of weird open conversation is exactly why I like asking the question.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You get good answers with this stuff.
Well, thank you. How do you determine what good behavior is? Elecktra kind of gave me a good segue with the end of her answer there.
Yeah. No, I discuss this with my son a lot because he very much wants to see things in black and white, and he doesn't understand the gray areas. And
He'll get there.
Yeah, he will. And I mean, I discuss this with him a lot. I use token economy, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy technique with my kid, to try to help him not be instantly gratified by instantly, like if he does a good thing, then he's not being rewarded instantly. Because he always wants toys, and he always wants candy, and he always wants TV, and he wants all the things that everyone has, and he doesn't have that. He hasn't developed enough to have filters all the way, emotionally or anything, So, what we discuss, and it is constantly ongoing, and we shift it a little bit, is, what makes up good behavior? What are your hard rules that are good things? And for my son, that would be like no hitting, no kicking, no screaming, not asking the same question 100 times over and over, listening. And then that itself, what is listening? Listening is actively listening. So if I ask you, like if I say, Odysseus, will you go feed the dog? And you don't talk to me, I don't know if you heard me. And I will say, were you listening? And he will say, yes. And I will say, well, what did I say? Mm-hmm. And then he'll be like, And I'm like, no, I want you to repeat back what I said, and I'll say it again. So like what is good for him? Those are his expectations as a child. To try, to know that he can safely talk to me, and that we will, if he's having a meltdown because he is becoming a child and not just a toddler. I know that I have to be very patient, and it can be hard sometimes. And he can be frustrated because there's language difficulties and things. But what is good is just the same as like what is bad, I guess. I think what is good is being compassionate and mindful, not making fun of other people. I have been made fun of so many times in my life as a young child, I got made fun of because I didn't talk, and then I got made fun of because I had prepubescent puberty. And then I was made fun of because I dressed in a certain way. I think everyone goes through those kind of things, but it really, internalize that kind of stuff for me. So, I want to treat other people how I want to be treated, or even better. And that's respecting people's differing ideas, actively listening to other people. What is good? I would say helping those who need more than you. Like, I roll around with like granola bars and water bottles and have conversations with homeless people almost on the daily basis. And I'm not one to give out $1 because I normally don't have $1, but I definitely can, send them to services they might not know about because I am in that industry. And, just have a conversation with someone that's different than me, and not just like, I try to not overlook what other people see as the invisible and the worthless. I see value in all of existence except for bees. No, bees are great. I'm just scared of them.
Bees are pretty great. Evan, how do you feel about bees? I mean, what's good?
Oh, bees are good. Bees are real good. Man, I mean, of course, it depends on what I personally consider to be morality, what is good, what is bad. And I think a lot of it is probably inherently rooted in my upbringing. There's a lot of Christian values that I think probably, still hold up. Don't kill, don't steal, don't covet. Like, pretty good wisdom. But
I like to do all those things.
Like, I don't know. Like, I do have a pretty strong moral compass there. Like, even I don't know. Even, systematic things. It's a hard thing because there's a part of me that wants to be like a law-abiding citizen. That's like, I believe in, abiding by the law and doing what's considered to be right, legally, socially, and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's not always right. And, what is bad behavior is often, there's things that I would consider to be bad behavior that's completely normalized, that's completely acceptable, or completely even just something you don't even think about. Like, I don't know. Like, I am very keenly aware that my diet is not great. Like, I'll go to like a fast food place and get like a burger or whatever. And it's like, that's just something you do. It's an American thing. But it's like, also, I'm feeding into this corporate machine that systematically, is terrible to animals. And it's like, I should really be a vegan or something. But then veganism has its whole thing. Like, it's hard to find right behavior, because sometimes what seems like it's right might have unintended consequences, and sometimes what seems wrong might just seem wrong for the time, or might seem wrong based on the context. And it's really trying to separate instincts from actual fact-based research, and that's tough because we're constantly learning new things and the world's constantly developing, and what's good and bad is always changing. So it's hard, and I just do the best that I can, and try not to be too hard on myself, even though I am. But I try not to be too hard on myself for things that are more systematic like that. I mean, whether it's wearing clothes that was probably made by, third world underage workers, things like that. I consider that to be bad behavior. But it's more acceptable because there's a huge distance there. It's, it's systematic, it's industrial, and I don't know. I think I have a pretty decent conscience about it, and yet it's not strong enough for me to change my behavior. But, it's also there's certain trappings of society that's what are my alternatives? I would have to completely change everything about how I function. And it's, honestly, it's just a shortcoming of mine that I'm not willing to do that, which again I would consider to be a negative thing. So I don't know, but otherwise, treat people with respect, try to have empathy. You don't necessarily have to agree with someone to understand someone. And I think I don't know, I think the golden rule is an okay place to start. I don't believe in it because, how does it go? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But that assumes everybody has the same values. Mm-hmm. And so it's I don't like being bothered at lunch if I'm sitting alone. Some people might feel lonely and might wish someone would come over and talk to them. Mm. And it's well, if I were him, I'd go over and talk to him. And so if they come and talk to me, I'm hey, leave me alone. Everyone has their own definition of what, they feel like they should be treated as. And then there's the silver rule, which is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. And I don't agree with that either, because they might want you to do something that compromises your morals too. Mm-hmm. And so it's I think those are good places to start because they're grounded in empathy, but you also have to use that as a springboard and then see how that aligns with whatever you've determined your morality to be. One of the biblical things is obey your parents, but there's some things that, your parents you probably shouldn't obey certain things, especially if they have, I don't know. There's lots of generational conflict out there right now about certain worldviews and how people are treated today based on, just biological things even. And it's it's a whole thing. And I don't know, there doesn't have to be a gaping canyon between people. You can understand where people come from. You can build bridges. It's possible, but it's really hard, and it takes both sides working together. And it's really hard. And I completely see why there's such a divide everywhere right now. It makes sense, but I don't know. I've gotten off topic.
No, you guys are really good at giving me the layup so that I can segue into the next question.
Cool.
But
Alley-ooping it.
yeah, the next question is, how do we reduce the division? But I also want to mention that there's the, I guess, inverse of the golden rule, which is not do unto others. It's do not do unto others what you would not want to have them do to you. And I feel like that one works a little bit better
That does work
universally.
better. Yeah.
But anyways, how do we reduce the division that has so permeated, or really has been consistent through the entire conversation, has just gotten louder?
Well, I think that traveling is one of the easiest ways to open a narrow mind. But obviously, it's an expensive thing.
Yeah.
Traveling and meeting new faces and talking to people that you've never talked to and you probably will never talk to again in your life, even with the social media age. I think that the more different type of folks you come across, the more understanding you become. Creating conversations with people that I know that I don't really go out and eat lunch a lot unless it's like with like Evan. And so I'm sitting there having lunch with him. But on occasion I will go out and eat lunch. Being a pretty lady, I often have people be like, oh, why are you sitting alone? Let me join you. And they almost always don't even ask. They just kind of do it. And I mean, if I really don't want to talk to people, I can tell them to, fuck off in more words than that. Normally I will go for like a really pretentious, I'm reading something and I don't want to be talked to. But I think that, trying to understand other ways of life, like there is a way to meet in the middle on almost anything, unless you're talking about devaluing human life based on ridiculous things like the color of the skin or the religion that they practice. I can't hold with any of that, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. But one of my longest friends that I had, he was a black man, and he would go to these parties, and this was like the South Side. And there would always be like this good old boy that had never seen anyone with more than a farmer's tan dark level. And he was very, white. He listened to, like Tool and all this like metal-y, rock music. He read, he was very intelligent. He, he would change the mind on, first being introduced to this person that was racist. And then he would become the exception to the rule, And I think that you kind of have to be that kind of person. I don't really tell people, well, hi, I'm pagan, hail Satan. People find out about me, through my work or through my music or whatever. And that's not all surface level stuff. That's my personal things, so they will, especially with like the work that I do as like my real job, they will always think, well, oh, you're very compassionate, and I will get thank yous. Thank you for doing what you're doing, just like how you would say thank you for your service to someone that served in the military. And they almost project exactly what they think of. And that in Oklahoma in the Bible Belt very often is that I'm a good Christian. And I
get that too, by the way.
Yeah. I worked at Cracker Barrel for a really long time, and the Cracker Barrel in I-40 is 90% what we called skirts. which are Heartland Bible Baptist students. They're the kind of Baptists that women are going to go to hell if they wear pants types. The world only has been in existence for 6,000 years, and Satan put dinosaur bones into the earth to trick us. And the devil is a trickster and all of this kind of stuff. And they do believe the rapture's coming and that kind of thing. And it was always like, it had been a ludicrous thing to me because I had never met people that had been so indoctrinated and ingrained and taught that without these rules, we are the idiots for not believing that. We could be converted. We could have our minds changed, and that whole conversion mentality. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, I think, is trying to convert someone to the opposite. But, if you can't have like a civil conversation where I've worked with these people for years, and they would always say, well, you're one of the good Satanists, after we'd been working together for so long. And I'd always be like, I'm not a Satanist. But they think I am, because anything outside of Christianity, whether you be agnostic, you are a Satanist, it's very black and white. And so, but they, they would get along with me. They respected me as a human. They just would pray for my soul constantly. So it's just, there are ways to meet in the middle, and you have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone and have conversations, but also you shouldn't ever step out of your safety, because the times that we live in are dangerous. I know that I've taught my son, and I don't care that we're white people, that if he sees a cop, that he needs to sit down and he needs to have his hands up and he needs to not move. I just, have a huge distrust for people that are gun fanatics and that kind of thing. Most of the people I know don't practice proper gun safety, that do that. I know friends that are pro shooting, precision shooters, ex-military, and they do competition shooting. And I know that they are very good at it. But most of the people I know that have guns, I worry that they will hurt themselves more than they hurt others. And then conservatives, I'm a what do they call it? A social justice warrior. But I am actually an advocate for social justice. Almost immediately, by way of what I do and how I treat people and view people, as we are all equals, but we all have different hands dealt to us, and some of us have more obstacles than anyone could imagine, preventing us from doing very simple tasks, that it can be very hard to even be listened to by someone with a very strong opposing viewpoint.
But the bootstraps, Elecktra.
I know, but I can barely tie my shoes because of arthritis, so I just wear on slip-ons normally.
Yeah. Reducing division.
Right, reducing division. Well, I might be a little more centrist than people realize. That's kind of like a negative word these days because everything's so polarized.
Sure.
But, I'm definitely left-leaning, but I don't 100% buy into any viewpoint, really. Things are more complicated. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I was messing with the mic earlier. So, I can find maybe more points of understanding than some, and a lot of it has just been dealing with people who are close to me and not shutting them out of my lives, but being willing to try and keep relationships going in spite of differences. Like, I think there's a place that you can meet in the middle, and that doesn't mean that you're moving to the middle. That doesn't mean that you're uprooting where you're at and going to, implant yourself in.
Right.
It just means that you have enough of a reach and an understanding beyond your own little bubble that you can actually communicate with someone like an adult. And which, sometimes is almost even belittled. I don't know. But I think that's a key thing is, not being completely in your own bubble, because a lot of people are in bubbles and don't realize it. I constantly strive to pop bubbles, and I am very aware that I'm still in a bubble. Like the way that news is brought to you, the way that, all interactions with the outside world happen. It's all curated for you now. And no matter what you do, if you're online, everything's going into an algorithm somewhere, and you're getting a skewed view of the world no matter what you do. And you have to be aware that what you're seeing is not necessarily the way things are. So, it's just a matter of getting out there and being more aware of other people, other cultures, other thoughts. And you don't have to agree with them. I'm not advocating, meeting someone halfway, like I said, doesn't mean that you're giving up your stance. It just means trying to find some place of commonality. And I think in a lot of ways that I operate, I tend to be pretty unabrasive. I tend to be pretty low key and hey, can't we all just get along? But there are points where it's I don't know, you've had Alex Sanchez on here. I really like how he handles that stuff, because he's the most lovable person on earth.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious, and you gotta love that guy. But he'll also be very vocal about things that he believes in and disagrees with. But if some individual person comes to him and says hey, that's, tries to start an argument with him, he'll turn around and say, hey, let's talk about it. He won't just fight back. And there might be some name calling at first, but I've seen it on Twitter and on Facebook, and he'll very legitimately be at that point, when somebody else comes into the conversation, it's less, throwing your voice into the void against an issue. It suddenly becomes two people having a conversation.
Sure.
And that's a completely different dynamic. And I think a lot of times people don't see that there's such a difference, but there is. And if you can harness that, if you can see a person as a person instead of, a label, or just whoever, a conservative or a social justice warrior, a pawn that's being played by whatever media conglomerate. If you see them as a person and you realize that they probably don't necessarily fit into that box, that's a start to me.
Well, the internet age, and this is also why road rage exists. It's all the same basic psychological principle, is that you forget to humanize.
Yes. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, road rage happens because you can't see into another person's eyes and see the micro expression of oopsie doodles if they forgot to use their blinker, or they kind of came into your lane, and that goes even more so with dehumanizing people on the other side of, it used to be chat rooms, but now it's, Facebook and Twitter. And it's because you literally don't I don't know. I know that 95% of the people that I interact with on the internet are real people, although I do kind of mess with bots once in a while, just because they're absurd the way that they react to you. But and I am a bad flat earth troll. because I believe that the earth is a sphere. But, you know, a lot of people forget that on the other end of that conversation is a human staring at a screen, because you can't stare at a screen. But also, I don't want people watching me on a webcam when I'm typing. I am, as often as possible, when my kid is asleep or when he's not in the house, I am as nude as I possibly can. So, you know, I'm if I could monetize that, I would not have to work. But yeah, dehumanizing other people because you cannot literally see them eye to eye is a bad thing in our day and age.
Also, as you can see, my webcam thing there is
I know.
Taped over.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I forgot to sort of ask this question earlier, but it kind of seeps into this thing. Why music?
Why music?
Why not? I don't know, like accounting or whatever. People always use accounting as the example. I don't know why, but yeah.
I went to school for accounting.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Fun fact.
Well, for me, you know, music came into my life at an early formative age and is completely part of me. It's a language that I feel like it passes all borders and barriers. Not everyone is going to like what you're playing, but when you get to the root that is music, it can make you happy. It can make you sad. It can make you angry. It makes you feel. It might not always come off as how someone that wrote it meant or what they were working through. I love to listen to music in languages that I don't understand what they are saying. And I have a semi-strict listening schedule that I try to seek out new music. And I also like to be alliterative. So Saturday is Sitar Saturday. And that's, I like the sounds of sitars, but I also love the oud, which is a lute. And I love what you would call world music, but that's in America. In America, we call it world music. In, you know, in Morocco, this is just their local music. In Japan, this is just their traditional music. I love pre-revolutionary Iranian pop. Oh my God. It's almost, you know, it's like it's amazing to see how music, even then when we didn't have the internet, could come from America and England and the Western world and fuse with these 1,000-year-old ideas of music. And there's really cool, I think, as a music nerd, friend of mine. His name is Neil Callan Clark, and he plays with his daughters. They have a trio. They play at one of those restaurants that has good food, Couscous. They have like a monthly show, I think, that they do. But he is a scholar, a music historian. He plays the oud, and he sings in Arabic and several other languages. And because a lot of people in Oklahoma do not speak those languages, he will give you like, this song is 300 years old and it was written by this person. And this is the story. Now, a lot of that is religiously based, but that's just, you know, how. And I really like some really old classical music, some choral stuff. And that also was religiously based. There was not secular then. You were either religious or you weren't. And there weren't multiple different religions to choose from. You know, there's like 400 represented Christian denominations, I think, in America. But then it was like either you are with the Church of England or or whatever. There were only so many options, or you were Muslim because that's where you lived, or Shinto, so there weren't options. You either were or you weren't, and you didn't go against the flow, because that's how we have things like the Salem witch trials or whatever, which was probably, a lot of people doing hallucinogens on accident. But I think music, it moves in a way that, it crosses all boundaries, because it is like, I don't know, for me, it's like just as natural as my heartbeat. And I think for many people that is true for them too, So, but I feel that even biorhythmically, it affects how our moods are, because a slower song, you're going to chill out, you're going to take deeper breaths. And death metal is really great for exercise. And, like when you hear something that's angry, you're not necessarily going to get angry. You're going to be like, other people are relating to this, my feelings.
Yeah.
And you can just get it out cathartically. Mm-hmm. And so, music. I honestly, that would probably be my spirituality, and more than anything is music. So
I've toyed with that idea about treating it with a little bit more of a religious rigor, and be like, well, as going to church is like having a practice session, and like journaling is like writing a song, and
Well, it's like most often you do that weekly. If you have a rehearsal with a band, you do it once a week at least. So.
Yeah, I don't, but I should. Like, I would like to practice more.
Special, like you have to set aside time, and
it's one of those things.
I've been like, I played for 45 minutes the other day, and I like got blisters because I've been a booking manager and not a musician for so long. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think music is something that's, I don't know. I've always considered it to be, it's not a competition, but of all the art forms, I mean, to me, it's just the purest. There's something about it that's, to me, more universal than anything else. It's intangible, completely intangible. And it's, magic, really. I mean, there's mathematics to it. I almost try to avoid music theory in a lot of ways, because it's almost like looking behind the curtain and understanding how everything works, and how you manipulate frequencies and sounds into certain results. But I kind of try to adhere to like almost like a childlike fascination with everything. I remember the first time I discovered that chord progressions were a thing. Like that was something I got to discover myself. Like I always thought you chose like a chord and stuck with it. I didn't really know how keys worked. Like I was young, and I was like, why won't this melody fit with this chord? It works here, but it doesn't work here. And then I found another chord, and I was like, oh, okay. And like, I started to understand harmonies, and just the discovery of how music works is really exciting. And just being on a general adventure with it, like I'm constantly finding fun things to do with it, and new ways to express myself with it that just nothing else compares to. Like I grew up wanting to be a writer. I didn't really set out to be a musician. I always thought I was going to write poetry, And then I thought I might write novels, and then I thought I might do journalism, and it was always writing. And there's just some things that words don't tap into. I mean, if you're a really good writer, you get really close. You know, there's something to be said for that. But there's something very immediate about music, and it's just instant. The only other thing I could think of that compares would be like, visual art, like paintings and things like that, which is more efficient because you can just look at a painting instead of having to listen to like a 5-minute song or a 1 hour, orchestra piece or whatever. But I feel like there's a more experiential element to music, and I feel like the expressiveness of that, unless, I don't know, like painting is a process, but it has like a final product, but music is always an experience. So I don't know. It's always been a part of me. Like I've always wanted to do music, but I never thought it was viable, and so I pursued writing more so than anything. Well, I pursued architecture originally because I thought it would be a great way of marrying like artistic things with like engineering, brainy things, and I don't know. I eventually found my way to music as a more legitimate thing than just like something that's nice to listen to. Like, I do get some catharsis out of it. I do get some identity out of it, but it took me a long time to really get there because a lot of times I just listened to stuff that I thought I was supposed to listen to. And so whenever I finally, really it was film scores that got me really into like, oh wait, no, music it taps into something, and it's like, it's my own special haven from the world, that this is me. And whenever you find something so specific, like at the time, film scores were pretty weird. I never knew anybody who were into them. I've since gotten to meet a lot of people who are also into them. But at the time, I felt like I was the only person in my world that was into this stuff. And it was one of those things. And I also think like now, with music being so accessible and being so specific, no matter what you're into, you can find something that's so incredibly uniquely for you that there's just a direct connection there that's really important. Like it's not just, oh, this is cool, this is for me, but it validates you as a person. That somebody else out there is making music that's so weird or so specific that you're like, I didn't think anybody out here, like some of my favorite music I've ever heard is like just some dude on SoundCloud just doing stuff. Like there's this guy I found back in the day when I was more involved there. He literally, he did like weird, he like made his own instruments, and he like did this experimental stuff in weird time signatures. And he would have like his toddler do just just random verbalizations. Just like, here's a microphone, go at it. And it was like, this is some of the most avant-garde stuff I've ever heard. And it's just a toddler. Yeah. And it like the context of it just like completely changed. Like now all of a sudden this is art. And I was like, I can't believe this exists. And like, I was never going to find that from a label or something. Nobody's going to sign this artist. This is just like a dad who like, has fun in his garage on the weekends or whatever. But it's like hearing something like that and knowing that somebody else is like into that. Like there's validation to me, and music has validated me probably more than anything ever. Not just because there's stuff that I like, and not just because I make stuff that people like, because there's validation there too, that people appreciate my art. But just the community here in Oklahoma in general, music, since I've been involved in it in a more three-dimensional real world way, I've met so many people that I never would have met if it weren't for music. And I've gotten to understand so many perspectives from people, like real people that I've met, like I didn't used to like metal. I didn't really used to like hip hop that much. And then I've come to really love both. Yeah. And there's so many voices that had gone unheard that, I mean, when we talk about bridging the divide, to me, music does that for me. Like, there's so many voices and perspectives that I get from people I never would have met. But it's just because music is this common thing that we have.
Yeah. Well, we met because of music.
Well, we did, yeah.
And we met at the Paramount Cafe.
Technically. We didn't really know who each other was at the time.
He saw me with my old art rock band, the Uncanny Violet Unicorn, and I had either was pregnant or had just had my kid.
You were pregnant.
I was pregnant. I was very pregnant then, and it was one of my last shows.
Yeah. And
I was having hiccups because my kid was kicking my diaphragm, and he was in 3/4 while I was trying to be in 4/4. It was a very difficult show, and I was like, I have lost music because I am choosing to be a mom kind of like moment. And I was also very hormonal. And he came up after the show and talked to me in front of where the piano was. And I was I'm stupid because I have a baby in me and I can't think because I just got off stage. And he just pretty much said good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. I bought a download card.
Yeah. And then,
fast forward 2 years.
Yeah. then we met properly, and I had, I wasn't baby brain.
It was Amp Fest.
Yeah, Amp Fest.
The first one.
And
and you were running the booth for Rock and Roll Camp.
Yeah, Rock and Roll Camp for Girls. I was representing. I wasn't working for Amp Fest.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just had a conversation, and I was all I've got to be on brand for Rock Camp. And we talked a lot, and then, we became friends. I always respected his work in the community, and then now we're dating. So, that goes.
How long have we been dating now?
Because you don't keep track. A year and a half almost. So.
Cool.
Cool. Since November, not
2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, music brought us together.
It did, yeah.
So.
And it's arguably a really strong bond between us.
Yeah. We always have something to talk about. And I tend to have really bad insomnia, and I love his vlog. When we're alone, he will talk to me about just whatever, including one time I think he read me an article or something about hamburgers to put me to sleep because I could not go to sleep. But I listen, now he's got the vlog, and so I can just put YouTube on and hit autoplay, and 2 or 3 vlogs in, I'm oh, and I'll have nice dreams about bands and Evan talking. Instead of what actually working with bands is like.
Are you insinuating that it's a nightmare sometimes?
To work with bands, yeah. Oh, I had a thought though, and I don't remember who said this quote, and it might be anonymously attributed anyway.
Bob Marley.
Yeah. Bob Dylan, Bob Marley.
One of the Bobs.
But music is, what is it? Let me think. The way that art is decoration.
Oh, that's a Zappa.
Okay, for space, music is decoration for time or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a Zappa quote.
Possibly.
It's attributed to Zappa. That doesn't necessarily mean it was
Yeah.
Right, well, yeah.
I love fakebuddhaquotes.com, and I've thought on many occasions of just making fake sounding Buddha quotes and putting them on top of a face. We have a couple minutes before I need to eat something before.
So let's lightning these last 2 questions. What makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Seeing my son thrive, and seeing my son enjoy things that I enjoy without me feeling like I force those things on him. I love to see other people do what they never thought was possible, like to see them like overcome things. I love to care for people, and seeing people well cared for makes me happy. I'm naturally a caregiver. And once in a while, what truly makes me happy is just shoving a big old hot dog in my face. So those are things that make me happy. But I mean, sometimes just staring at a wall with no phone going off for 30 minutes is also pure bliss.
Oh, yeah.
I'll preface by saying I think happiness is overrated. I think a lot of people pursue happiness, but it's not really an end goal the way, I think sometimes you can you can compromise yourself and do a lot of bad things in the pursuit of happiness. And you might have it, but, happiness is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. So, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of happiness maybe sometimes stems from just ignoring terrible things that are a part of existence. So that being said, not a whole lot really makes me happy, but a lot makes me content. Cool. And there's a difference. And I don't shoot for highs, versus lows. I just shoot for kind of contentedness. And cool. So a lot of things do that for me. Peace, mostly just clearing my mind and being, fully conscious and aware of existence and who I am. Reminding myself of who I am. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I get lost in the world. And I've gotten to where I've built my life enough that I'm pretty okay with who I am. And so, I feel like I'm a decent person, and that helps me feel okay. Music is probably the thing that gives me the most joy in life, but it's only very specific times. If I create something that I love, or if I discover something that I love, those are really great moments. I really like supporting and validating people. Helping people feel valued and worthy of a number of things. But I don't know, sometimes hearing someone give me feedback for something I've written, for instance, and, they might say, hey, nobody else pointed this out, but you did. Or hey, this really, you got what I was going for. Yeah. A lot of people do music coverage and it's very shallow. It's very, here's what it sounds like. Here's what it is. But you don't actually delve into, here's what it's about. Here's what it's doing. And here's why it's important. And here's why you should listen to it. Not just, hey, it's cool and it's out. That's the big thing. The occasion is, hey, it's new. It's out. Right. Yeah, but what makes it good, you know? There's some good writers that have done some really good things. Nothing against them at all. But anyway, yeah, moving on.
All right, so cake or pie and plug your stuff.
Cake or pie?
Cake or pie.
Cake or pie, and then plug your stuff.
It's got to be pie.
Well, Evan would know this. I am someone that very much will order my desserts and be like, no, I want that before my entree. And ideally, I will not choose between cake or pie.
Well, ideally. Actually, I'd still choose pie, though.
It depends on what kind of cake and what kind of pie.
Yes, it does.
If it's a plain white sheet cake, no thank you. I will take an apple pie over that, even though that's not my favorite. So, no, both simultaneously. And then, after I've had one bite of each, I'm going to try both of them together. And then I'm going to get some food that's actually going to make my tummy not feel upset. I am Elecktra. You can find me on the internet at electrasmusic.wixsite.com/awesome, since I remember that since the last time. Or on at Electra's Music on Facebook. I'm on Spotify. There is another Elecktra on Spotify, but mine has a weird, freaky double weird thing. Also, there's just like a freaky picture of the two of them. Yeah, I'm on pretty much every platform for music distribution. And I'm at Elecktra Eclectic on Instagram and at Elecktra5000 on Twitter, where you will see me normally being less nice than I am on Facebook. And also, just being a little bit more real. And I have a show on May 24th, Friday, May 24th, at Vintage 22 in Ada. And
Which, as of the day of this podcast coming out, is tomorrow.
Okay. Tomorrow, go to Ada. It's a lovely town. Like, really, stay in one of their hotels and enjoy Ada. It is beautiful. Vintage 22 is awesome and welcoming. They have good food, nachos and pizza. Eat them both at the same time. And then Sessions, not far down the street, is also a really nice little bar venue. And there's some cool, thrift stores and antique stores and just coffee shops and stuff to check out in the daytime. I highly recommend it. It's a nice little getaway. And soon enough, Evan and I will be leaving the state for a weekend again, like we have done in the past, to play some music.
Sweet.
But this time we'll be doing it in Texas instead of Missouri and Kansas and Tulsa.
Where can we find your stuff?
I like to think that cheesecake is a happy marriage between cake and pie. So I really like cheesecake. Cheesecake is really
cheesecake
good.
Is pie, but that's a weird.
Is it pie though? It's a cake. It's cheesecake.
It has a crust.
It has a pie crust, just definitionally a pie crust, and then it's pie filling.
Well, then
cheesecake.
It's 100% decided. Then pie all the way. I mean, I'm not big on maybe hot peach pie or something, but otherwise pie, especially Arbuckle Mountain fried pies. Those are the best.
I used to have a deal where I could trade
meat pies.
Trade pizzas for some Arbuckle fried pies.
Yeah, so I don't really have anything specific coming up, but I do have a lot of stuff in the works. I just don't have the details fleshed out. But be looking for something around October that I'm not going to mention. But hopefully it'll come to fruition.
October 2020, because that's a lot of work to do.
We'll see. We're shooting for October 12th of 2019. But just mark the date, and we're going to shoot for it. Not telling you what it is yet. But anyway, I'm Jarvix. Musically, I am also on all the things, Spotify and SoundCloud and Bandcamp. Jarvix.bandcamp.com is probably the best place to go. That's where I have most of my stuff. I have the deep cuts and I have the oddball stuff. And, if you are to download stuff, more money goes to me than if you buy it through another avenue. So Jarvix.bandcamp.com. You can also access all this on Jarvix.net, which is my website. I'm at Jarvix Schmarvix. That's JarvixSchmarvix. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So that's how to keep up with me performing and doing music stuff, and then occasionally other stuff. I also run Make Oklahoma Weirder, MakeOklahomaWeirder.com. I'm online on social media as Weirder OK. That's at WEIRDEROK. And there's also a YouTube channel for that I'm looking to do a little bit more with. coming out here soon. But I do have a vlog that I put out that we've referenced a couple of times, so I'll mention that. I shoot to do those about once every Friday. It kind of varies, but for the most part, I do a weekly vlog where I just talk for 10 minutes about local music, and that's kind of the most consistent thing I'm doing right now. But I do album reviews, I do interviews, I got a podcast coming out soon, so that'll be fun. I have details about that, but I can't share them yet. But look out for a new podcast, probably late summer, early fall. But you can just stay up to date on all that stuff at makeoklahomaweirder.com. I also run an open mic down at the deli. It's the first Wednesday of the month. That's once a month. Sign up at 10, shows at 10:30. I play a couple of songs every time. So if you ever want to see me and you're not sure when, you can always come out to that. It's free. You just got to be 21 or older because it is the deli. And I think that's pretty much everything I have at the moment.
We almost ended on 69. That's why I was like, cut.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to lightning my plugs. So thank you. I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Elecktra Stanislava.
Evan Jarvix.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. You can also look up at Power Cycle Music on all the social medias. Find the podcast on all the stuff. Leave reviews and all that junk. I always end my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.